I'm not sure he can hear me. Let's see if we can hear him. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Because I can't hear anything on your end, but that's okay. I guess I don't need to. So, hi, everybody. Oh, there we go. Okay. Wow, so good to see everyone, and good to be with you today. We are doing, I'm going to give just a quick update on what we are, how things are going here with us in Italy, and then I am going to share a brief lesson, and then we'll let you go. Troy, though, did tell me the other day when we practiced this, he told me to take as much time as I wanted, which is never a good thing to say to me, okay? But I'll try to not take up too much of your time this morning. It is this evening here in Italy. Rebecca and Violet have gone to a park. There's a little park down the road from our house where Violet has a bunch of friends, and we've been making some friends as well. And so we go there just about every day, and they've gone there today, but they send their love and their greetings. And I know they miss you all very much. Violet misses her friends. She still talks about Paisley and Audrey and those boys. She doesn't remember the boys' names. She just calls them those boys. She refers to them all the time, and I know she misses you. I can hear a little bit now, so I can hear. I think I can hear you guys now. But we're doing very well in Italy. The work is progressing. And now, as many of you know, we've had some hiccups this last year. Has been difficult. And it's been difficult for you as well, I know. I can tell just by looking at the church building. When we did this last year, pre-COVID, every pew was full. And now I don't know that you can have every pew full. I know we can't. We have to have social distancing at all times, and we have to wear masks in the church building at all times. But we are very free, other than the mask situation, where basically, that is that you have to wear masks when you go inside anywhere. So in the church building, in a store, in a restaurant, you have to wear masks, except for when you're eating, you can take them off, which is kind of funny, I guess. Obviously you need to, but it's weird that you have to wear them in there in the first place, but that's just me. But it's been a difficult year. We had, we were on lockdown for 3 months. We were not able to leave our apartment except for to go to the grocery store. And that was pretty difficult, but we got through it with God's help and with your prayers. And life is basically back to normal now. I've started to do some Bible studies face-to-face. I had my first Bible study that was not online last week with one of my favorite students, a man named Valentino. And we had a great study. He is very interested in Bible figures. So we had a really good study a few months ago on Zoom about Mary Magdalene. He was interested in her because he had always heard that she had been a prostitute previous to her interaction with Jesus. And I showed him from the Bible that simply isn't true. Now that's really gotten his attention, that most of what he believes about the Bible isn't true because he heard it just from other people. So it's made a great opportunity for me with Valentino. We had a very good study the other day, and this was last Tuesday. Now I've been doing studies online. Rebecca has had a student that's been coming to our house for the last few months named Marina, and those studies are also going very well. But we're starting to pick up more studies now that things are just a little more free. We are a little concerned about this year, the coming months, as far as whether or not COVID is going to spike again, and then if it does, what's going to happen with that? But in the meantime, we're doing as much as we can and meeting with as many people as we can. Violet started school last Monday, but it was not the official start of school. Her school has a special week that they do for students where they can come for half a day and review and just get back in the habit of going to school. So tomorrow will be her official first day of school, and that's different this year too. The kids really aren't allowed to play at all. They have recess, but they just have to sit at their desks and color or something like that, I guess. So it's really interesting, but she loves it. We had no problems with her going back. She didn't cry at all or get upset, which was very good. We were afraid, since she hadn't been there in a long time, that she would have a problem. But anyway, she's doing really well, and Rebecca and I are too. We have, if you read our last newsletter, we've expanded our work some. We have, as you probably know, you may remember, we have the bulk of our work in Florence, but there's a city just north of Florence called Pistoia. It's a smaller city, maybe 20, 40,000 people. And there is a congregation there, and we go once a month, and I preach. I'll be going there next Sunday to preach. And we've started that again after the lockdown. I've been now twice. This coming Sunday will be my third time since the lockdown to go. And that we just love that congregation, and it's always nice to go and be able to preach there. And I have 4 or 5 students there. I think I have 5 now that I'm working with. Mostly online. They're not, the church buildings, we're only allowed to go there for worship, so I can't go there for classes, so we just meet online. But the studies are going well, and so that's exciting. It's good to have that opportunity there. I actually met a guy, he's a member of the church. He was baptized, I think, about 1.5 years ago, maybe about the time we arrived. And he was telling me his story. He was a drug addict, and he was converted in rehab. And now his family, who's in Naples, they're moving up to Pistoia to be with him. And he wants me to teach his wife and his children. So that's exciting. We have that opportunity coming up in the next few weeks. We were involved with a baptism of a Peruvian couple in Milan just a couple months ago. They basically were studying online with some people in Peru, some missionaries in Peru, who then contacted us and asked us to help them. Now, Milan is about a 2.5 hour train ride from Florence, so we don't get to go there all the time. We're trying to go once a month to worship with them. And now, though, we are also studying with that couple online to help them grow. They have become Christians, they were baptized, and we're working with them just to help them with some first principle things. And they want to teach others. They're really excited to have obeyed the gospel, and they want to share that with others. Then there's a interesting interesting story in Torino. Turin, I think, is the English word. There's a man and a woman who were baptized, who I thought were a married couple. It turns out they're not. They're just friends. He actually is married, and to another woman who is not baptized, but they worship together on Zoom with the Pistoia congregation, and I assume they were a couple, and they're not. But I'm also starting to work with them as well on some first principle things. They had learned about becoming a Christian in the church, and they're also excited to learn. They're worshiping every week via Zoom. There's not a congregation in their town, though we are looking at how we can start one there. I'm talking to a couple of the Italian Christians about some things we can do to help them, so that's exciting as well. Then there's a guy named Jerry. Jerry is Nigerian, and he was studying the Bible through World Bible School, I think it is. Not World Video Bible School. There's 2 different programs, but World Bible School. He was studying through them, and he learned the truth, and he wanted to be baptized. So he went to the Pistoia congregation where he was baptized, but now he's worshiping with us in Florence, and he is really on fire for the Lord. He is asking me for materials every day. Troy just sent me a book for him to read last week, and I got that to him now, and he's just devouring everything he can, and we're studying, and he wants to preach. He wants to bring others to Christ, especially his wife. His wife is Italian. He's Nigerian. They have 2 children, and she's very Catholic. So there's a little bit of tension in their marriage right now. As a Nigerian, his in Nigeria, the husband is the head of the house, and in Italy, that's not always the case. So there's a bit of a cultural conflict there. He wants her to sort of force her to come to church, and I'm explaining to him that's not the way to do it. She needs to come on her own, but let's try just studying with her and bring her to the truth the way you came to the truth, and let her make that decision on her own. So we're working on that, but he is on fire, and he really wants to preach and teach others. So we're excited about him as well. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we went to a congregation which is basically the furthest south in Italy. I think Sicily might be a little bit further south, but for the actual peninsula, it's the Taranto congregation, and they're a congregation of about 15 people in a city a little smaller than Florence, about 200,000 people in the city, about 15 members, 20 members in the congregation. But like most congregations in Italy, they're all older. There's not any children. There is one young man, he's about 29 years old, I think, that goes to the congregation, and he and I are texting back and forth, and he's a Christian, been a Christian a long time, but and was raised in the church, but we're also going to start talking on Zoom, and we're hoping to go down to Taranto maybe a couple of times a year for me to preach a gospel meeting. They're really eager for help. Everyone is in Italy, and we just wish we could be in every one of these cities. But obviously that's not going to happen, but we have the technology, so we're working with as many people we can online, and then trying to travel to these different places at least a few times a year to meet the students face to face and to encourage these small congregations. Now, we don't have any students in Taranto yet, but we're working with the congregation, asking them to please find people who want to study, and we will study with them online, and then hopefully we can grow that congregation from afar. There's another student that is supposed to call me tomorrow, and he is in a city called Vicenza, which is another smaller city just north of Venice. And there's a congregation there. It's a pretty good congregation. Doctrinally, they're very sound. And they're probably, again, about 25 members. Again, they are aging. They do have a few children. But one of the interesting things about their congregation is they actually have two congregations that meet, an Italian congregation and a Ghanaian congregation. There's a lot of immigrants there from Ghana, and they have their own congregation. And I think their service is in English, although I do think they do sing sometimes in the national language of Ghana. Now, Ghana, like most African countries, has many dialects. In fact, from village to village, from region to region, they have basically totally different languages. So they have English as their second national language. They have a dialect that is the national language, but they also speak English with one another if they're from different regions. And so their service is sort of mixed. It's in this Ghanaian language, which I'm sorry I don't know the name of, and then in English. And then they have an Italian congregation, which is smaller. The Ghanaian congregation has more children and is growing more, and we're trying to help both of those groups. Now, they also work together. I think once a month or once a quarter, they have a worship together where they sing in Italian and in this Ghanaian language, and it's a really beautiful sight. We've seen videos. We haven't actually been there yet, but we're hoping to go there, especially now that I have a student there starting this week. So we have students all over Italy, and that's good because we want to grow the church in Italy, not just in Florence. We want to grow the church in Florence, but Italy is a fairly sizable country. If it was a state in the U.S., it would be slightly bigger than Florida, slightly smaller than California. I think I read it would be about the 5th biggest state, maybe after New Mexico or something like that. But the way it's laid out is different, of course. It's more like Florida in that regard. And there's not a lot of people here working and preaching the gospel. So we're trying to preach the gospel to all of Italy as best as we can. And we're so thankful to God that we have the technology to do that, that we live in this age where we can meet with somebody over the internet, and it's as if we're face to face. Now, we're also working in Rome. I've been there twice in the last 3 months to preach. I'll be going back down there in December to preach again, and we're looking for students there to work with there in Rome. We don't have any yet, but we're hoping to, so we can help that congregation grow as well. It's interesting, the last time we were in Rome, I preached from the book of Romans, and that blew my mind to think that here I am, I'm in a city preaching from a book that was written to Christians in this city some 2,000 years ago. That was just, it was really interesting to think about that. So anyway, we're doing great, and the work is progressing, and we are so thankful for your prayers and for your support. We love you all so much. We know that we have a great group behind us, and I want to take a second to thank Mike Scott, our deacon of missions. We wouldn't, be able to do anything without him, and he checks up on us all the time. And we just love him so much, and so much appreciate him, and the elders, of course, appreciate you all as well. And I want to mention Andrea Wilson. You might not know this, but Andrea is really something of a lifeline for us. She takes care of our money, and she just does a brilliant job. And I want to thank her and Bliss for handling our mail, and Troy is also great with communication and keeping us in touch and everything. And we just appreciate all of you, but I wanted to just take a second to specify those folks. Now, before, I guess moving on from that, and if you have any questions about the work, please email me. You can get my email address from Troy or Mike or Andrea or Bliss. They have the elders, I'm sure, have it as well. And if you have any questions or would like to know more, please don't hesitate to ask. By the way, I am working on a video presentation since we can't get back to the States this year to report on the work. We're going to do a video report that we're going to send to all of our supporters, and obviously our sponsoring congregation there at Margaret Street. And that'll be out hopefully by the end of the month. It's taking me a little while to learn the technology, but hopefully I can get it out by the end of the month, and you'll be able to get a broader picture, a better picture of the work. I do want to just make sure that, I don't know if since I didn't say it specifically, there have been now 5 baptisms here in the last 2 months, and since August 1st, I think, or maybe the end of July, so a little bit over 2 months, 2.5 months. And that's great news, and we thank God for that and give him the glory for giving the increase. And again, this is all, you all are part of that. Whether you realize it or not, you are, as Philippians, Paul teaches us in Philippians. Also, one more thing, and then I'm going to share something with you from Acts chapter 17, and that is the last thing to announce is Rebecca finally, after 1.5 years, has permission to live in Italy, and that is such a load off of our minds. And it's very complicated to explain the immigration process here, but Violet and I have been legal aliens, I suppose you could say, since we arrived, really, but Rebecca has not been. She has been an illegal alien, although not quite, but she didn't have the ability to leave the country, because if she had left the country, she might have a hard time getting back in. Well, now we can do that because she has permission to leave, or permission to stay, rather, which means she has permission, ironically, permission to leave and come back. And we would come to the States and visit you all, but because of coronavirus, we can't do that. So hopefully we'll be able to do that either early next year or maybe in the summer, and we'll talk to the elders about that. But we'll send you that video presentation hopefully by the end of the month, and you can see that. So thank you so much for your prayers. That's just such a load off of our minds, and we really appreciate you. If you have a Bible with you, please turn it to Acts chapter 17. Or if you have your Bible on your phone, open it up to Acts chapter 17. And we're going to be mostly looking at verses 16 and following. I'm working on a study of Acts chapter 17, really verses 22 to 34, Paul's speech, Paul's sermon on the Areopagus, Mars Hill. And the reason why I'm working on this study is it's a great example. In fact, it's probably really the only example, or maybe the best, I should say, example in the New Testament of a cross-cultural mission effort. Here we have Paul, who is a Roman Jewish man from Tarsus, who was brought up in Jerusalem, who was a monotheist his whole entire life. He has always known the God of Israel and worshiped the God of Israel. And he's speaking to a purely Gentile audience in Athens, at one time the intellectual and cultural center of the world. It's not that way in Paul's age, but it still sort of has that reputation. And he is introducing a different God, a very strange God to these people who are from a completely different culture. Now, we know that this is not the first time somebody has preached to Gentiles. Peter was the first to preach to Gentiles in Acts chapter 10. There were probably proselytes. For example, the Ethiopian eunuch, he was a Jewish man, but he was probably a proselyte, meaning a Jewish convert, a convert to Judaism. And he had been taught, and Cornelius had been taught, and Cornelius was a Gentile. The difference is, though Cornelius was familiar with the God of Israel, he was a friend of the synagogue, he gave alms to the poor, and so he knew God. These people don't. So as a person who's working cross-culturally, this is a really fascinating sermon to me. But I really want us to look, beginning in verse 16, because that's sort of caught my eye recently for my own personal study. Now, where we have Paul is in Athens. He has most recently been in Thessalonica and Berea. And in both of those cities, he had basically the same experience. He preached to the Jews in the synagogue and eventually to Gentiles. Gentiles follow him as well. And he was met with almost immediate success. You can see that in Acts chapter 17 and verse 4. Where after Paul has preached, it says, and some of them were persuaded, and a great multitude. Boy, what I wouldn't give to convince a great multitude of the truth. But a great multitude of the devout Greeks and not a few of the leading women joined Paul and Silas. Well, then after this, though, so he has this great success, and then after that, he gets run out of town by the non-believing Jewish people, drive him out of town, and he has to go to Berea. And in Berea, he basically has the exact same thing happen. He's met with almost immediate success. He's converting people to Christ. But then the Jews in Thessalonica hear about this, and they come to Berea, and they stir up trouble there, and he has to run away again. Now, let's read verse 14, Acts chapter 17, verse 14, and we're going to read verse 14, 15, and 16. Then immediately the brethren sent Paul away to go to the sea, but both Silas and Timothy remained there in Berea. So those who conducted Paul brought him to Athens, and receiving a command for Silas and Timothy to come to him with all speed, they departed. So Paul has left Berea, he's come to Athens, and he has some people with him, some people traveled there with him, and he sends them back to Berea to tell Silas and Timothy to come and meet him in Athens. Now, something very interesting, we're going to pause right here for just a moment. This trip to Athens does not seem planned. And there's many scholars, many commentators who believe this, who say, it almost seems like Paul did not really intend to go to Athens as a mission point. It was almost sort of just a stopping point between Berea and Corinth, where he will go and he'll spend a couple of years in Corinth. But it almost seems just like a sort of a convenient place to stop and wait for Timothy and Silas. And here's one of the reasons why I think that is in verse 16. Now, while Paul waited for them at Athens. So he's in Athens, and he's waiting for them. And again, it just seems like this is sort of an unscheduled stop. However, watch what happens. While Paul waited for them in Athens, his spirit was provoked within him when he saw that the city was given over to idols. We're going to come back to that in just a minute, but we'll read on. Therefore, he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with the Gentile worshipers, and in the marketplace daily with those who happen to be there. So as his custom is, he starts in the synagogue. That's what he did in Thessalonica, that's what he did in Berea, and that's what he does here. But notice what motivated him to go in there. It was the idols. Now, it's unlikely that the Jews there in Athens were involved in idol worship. So I don't know what was happening with these conversations in the synagogue. I don't know if maybe Paul was just using that as sort of a way to get in and say, hey, you guys are surrounded by idols here, and then use that as a way to preach to them about Jesus. I'm not 100% sure. But he also has the Gentile worshipers. These are probably Gentiles who they would be called proselytes at the gate, which means they wanted to convert to Judaism, but they hadn't taken that final step. So they would just go there to the synagogue, be part of the synagogue as much as they could, being uncircumcised, and then and just basically being enamored with Judaism. But these, again, are people who know the God of the Bible, the God that you and I know, Jehovah. But he also goes to the marketplace. And this is a little bit different. There's no mention of that aspect of his mission work in Thessalonica or Berea. But he goes to the marketplace, and he talks daily, every day, with those who happen to be there. So interesting, he's here basically just as a stop in Athens on his way to Corinth, waiting for his co-workers, but he doesn't waste any time. He doesn't waste that time there. He takes it as an opportunity to preach the gospel. Now, I know as a Christian, my goal, my life goal is to be more like Christ. And I want to be more like Christ, but I also like to be more like Paul, because I know I've wasted opportunities. I come in contact with people, and I haven't preached the gospel to him. I'm not under the impression that Paul ever came in contact with somebody who didn't hear the gospel. And I need to improve on that, even as a missionary. Now, I preach the gospel with as many people as I can, but there's more out there that I could teach, I'm sure. More out there that I could invite, I'm sure. And I need to always be thinking about that. And this study has really got me thinking about that. And I hope you'll think about it as well. Then, verse 18, then certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers encountered him, and some said, what does this babbler want to say? I love that verse. What does this babbler want to say? I wonder if anybody's ever thought that about me, this babbler here. And others said, he seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods because he preached to them Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new doctrine is of which you speak. For you are bringing some strange things to our ears. Therefore, we want to know what these things mean. For all the Athenians and the foreigners who spent their time there, who spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear some new thing. So Paul has this great opportunity now. He's taken to Mars Hill, where he gets the opportunity to preach the gospel. And you might be familiar with that. He starts, I love the way he starts this. He says, then Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you're very religious. Now, there's a way to interpret that where Paul is actually insulting them, but I don't believe that. I believe he's complimenting them. He's saying, you're on the right track. You're religious. You're seeking God, and he's going to talk about that in just a moment, because he saw the altar to the unknown God. And through this whole discussion, he doesn't really insult them. He doesn't attack them. Sometimes with the Jews, he would be, and Peter would be especially, really sort of, very bold in his presentation of the gospel. Peter, I think, if I'm not mistaken, every one of Peter's sermons that's recorded in the book of Acts, he tells the Jews, you killed the Son of God. I mean, he makes no bones about it. But Paul is a little bit more gentle here when he's talking to these Athenians. He says, you're very religious, for I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription to the unknown God. Therefore, the one whom you worship, without knowing him, I proclaim to you. And then he goes on and preaches about creation, and he talks to them about how God, not gods, but God created everything, and we're all his children, and God doesn't dwell in these idol temples, and he's not made of gold or silver or any other thing. but he's pretty gentle about it. He doesn't go after them, like some of the prophets did to the idol worshipers in the Old Testament, where they say, you carry around these dumb idols, dumb meaning they cannot speak, idols that you made with your own hands. This is ridiculous. Now, Paul doesn't have that attitude. Now, he doesn't condone what they're doing. He doesn't tell them that they're doing a good thing by worshiping these idols, but he just explains to them. It's just a great example of how to teach others who are coming from a different background. And then he goes on and talks about how God has overlooked these times of ignorance, but now has appointed all men everywhere to repent, verse 30, because he has appointed a day, verse 31, on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. He has given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. Interestingly enough, Paul doesn't mention Jesus' name in this sermon. Maybe he did, and Luke just didn't record it, but in what he has recorded here, he doesn't mention Jesus' name. But, now some people reject him after he talks about the resurrection from the dead. Probably those Epicurean philosophers, they didn't believe in life after death. The Stoics did, but the Epicureans didn't. We don't have time to get into all that right now. But they sort of they kind of reject him. Some people reject him, but others follow him. And now I know he was preaching Jesus because of what Luke said in verse 18, because he preached Jesus in the resurrection. But in this sermon, it's just interesting to me that he doesn't mention his name. Maybe he just got their attention and then later took that opportunity to introduce them a little more fully to Jesus. Anyway, these people follow him, and again, it's just a few people follow him, and then he goes on to Corinth. And it's just, I just think it's just this great example of cross-cultural missions, but that's not the main point. I want you to go back in verse 16, and I want us all to think about something, a question I've been asking myself, and then we'll close. Now, while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him when he saw the city was given over to idols. I want to ask you a question. Is your spirit ever provoked within you? Now, many of you probably know I don't have social media. Rebecca has a Facebook account, and she uses it really just to update people on our work mostly, and a little bit about our lives, and ask for prayers. Every now and then, I go on and I look at her Facebook, and I see, especially this year, in these last few months, a lot of people, a lot of Christians, whose spirits are provoked within them, but not necessarily about spiritual things. What was it that provoked Paul's spirit? It was that idol worship. Here's these people worshiping these idols. They're not honoring the true God. What I'm seeing, and again, this is not addressed to anybody there in that room, but I'm seeing a lot of people whose spirits are provoked within them for worldly reasons, for political reasons. And there's nothing wrong with politics, nothing wrong with being passionate about the things you believe there, but what if our spirits were provoked within us? What if Scott's spirit was provoked within him about spiritual things to the level it is about worldly things? What if, when I go out in Florence and I see hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are not Christians? What about when you go out in Milton and you see thousands of people every day who are not Christians, not New Testament Christians? Is your spirit provoked within you? I think it ought to be. I think mine ought to be. And again, this is a question I'm asking myself. Is my spirit provoked within me? And if it is, what am I doing about it? Even if my spirit is provoked within me over some political thing, am I using that as a springboard for the gospel? Or am I using it to try to win an argument? To try to get somebody to see my side of a particular issue? And I'm not going to tell you what my side is on any particular issue right now, politically speaking. Lately, my spirit has been more provoked within me, I hope, because I'm really trying to concentrate on it, on these spiritual matters. And I think, and when I go outside and I see all these people, and I think to myself, you know, if Jesus were to come back right now, again, Rebecca and Violet are at a park right now, and we go there just about every day, and there's usually, you know, 50 people there at least. And I think, if Jesus were to come back right now, the only people who would go to heaven are these little children, and that's great. What about all their parents? What about all the people in this city? Boy, is my spirit provoked within me? It should be. It ought to be. And just like Paul, I need to go and find opportunities to teach others. Paul went into the synagogue where he had an audience. He had the opportunity to go in and speak. We don't have that here. The Catholic Church, which is the biggest church here, they don't let us come in and preach, unfortunately. But I can meet people on the street. I can hand them a card that just says, hey, you want to study the Bible? Here, call me. I can hand them a tract. I can invite them to church. I might not have the opportunity to stand up in the marketplace. I might not have the opportunity to stand on Mars Hill and preach to a great multitude of people. I wish I did. But you know what? I can introduce myself to somebody and say, hey, I go to church over here. We'd love to have you come with us. All of us can do that. But our spirits need to be provoked within us. We need to recognize the need, and then we need to learn how to do it. I love, Troy had given me a book last year that I really like. It's called Bring, Teach, Keep. I think I got that right. And you might have seen it. I think he may have taught it there at one time. I don't remember. Not everybody's a teacher, but maybe you could be a bringer. Maybe you could be a keeper. I think we could all be bringers. I think we could all be inviting people at least. You hear the gospel, the worst they can say is no. Is your spirit provoked within you? I just want to leave that thought with you today. Is your spirit provoked within you over people's souls? And if not, maybe we need to if mine's not, I need to rethink things and really focus on where my priorities are. If my spirit is provoked within me, what am I doing about it? Hopefully, I'm finding opportunities to teach people the gospel. I want people to go to heaven. I want heaven to be full. It can never be. It doesn't ever run out of space. But I want to see as many people as I can there. And so I want my spirit to be provoked. And then I want to take that as a springboard to teach people the gospel. Thank you so much for your attention. Now, I can only see really clearly Rick, so he's the only one that I know for sure has paid attention. Now, I'm sure all of you did. But we love you guys so much. I thank you for your time. Thank you, Troy, and the elders for giving me the opportunity. And I'm going to turn it back over now to Troy or to someone, I guess. And I'm going to go ahead and log out and say goodbye. And we hope to see you all again soon.
Love you, brother. Thank you so much for all the work that you do there. And we send you our love.
Thank you.